Welcome. We're sitting down with David Clases. He's a chemist from the University of Graz and a BioNanoNet Association member. David Clases recently won the prestigious ERC starting grant in the physical and analytical chemical sciences. His project is called NanoArchive, deciphering information encoded on the nanoscale. David, thanks for sitting down with BNN.
Thanks for having me.
So you received your ERC starting grant to track down nanoparticles in polar and glacial ice. What are you hoping to achieve?
So actually the first level is that we have to start developing the instrumentation and bring the technology into place. And this will take up most of the time for this project. And once we have accomplished that, we can use this technology to trace particles in different systems, including in ice, and then start seeing what they encode and what we can learn for them in terms of environmental processes and so on.
You call your project NanoArchive. What kinds of information can be encoded at the nanoscale?
Okay, so there are different levels of information that we have. So the particles themselves, they incorporate information like their molecular and elemental composition, their sizes, and also their number concentrations. And we can use this information to go on the next level and actually investigate how particles were transported through the atmosphere, for instance, where they come from. And we can use that to reconstruct, for example, paleoclimatic conditions, or for example, the emission of particles in anthropogenic pathways. And we can use the very little information on one end to tell the big picture on the other end.
Okay, that's really exciting detective work you're doing then.
Yeah.
What led you to choose this area of research?
Yeah, so I think overall it's a lot of randomness. So I don't think there's like a very straight line. It's lots of trail forks and random meetings and acquaintances that led me down that path. I think one constant is that I was always fascinated about analytical chemistry and specifically about elemental mass spectrometry. And in the very beginning, I was just testing different facets of this instrumentation and techniques. And I got stuck with looking at nanomaterials and microparticles. And I realized that there is lots of interesting information and stories hidden at the nano and micro scale. And it's basically a large untrodden path. And therefore, I was very intrigued of going down something that somebody never had a look at. And that's the reason why I chose it.
Yeah, it sounds really exciting place to be. You already touched upon this a little bit. So you had a very, not a very linear career path with some twists and turns, would you say?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like in retrospective, it always looks like a straight line, but I think there were lots of trail forks which were in the way and lots of random decisions which guided me one or the other way. So yeah, it's hard to tell because all the things that I'm doing today depend on people that I met along the way, on things that I read, things that I visited. So it's I think it's a random composition. It's hard to narrow it down to one straight line, I think.
Yeah, I think that a lot of our viewers and readers can relate to that for sure. I was imagining that you as a child were probably playing with ice forts and in the snow and so on with this leading you down to researching nanoparticles in polar ice. Did you always know you wanted to be a scientist? Was this a fascination from the beginning?
Well, so I'm from the northwest of Germany, so the winters there are a little bit too gray and too warm to play with snow. So that's definitely not where the fascination comes from. So I think the reason is that I was collaborating with an ice core scientist over the last couple of years, and he really sparked the interest in me and showed me what kind of mysteries are encoded in these kind of specimens. But in regards to the question about me becoming a scientist, I think I was always interested in the natural sciences. And I think I decided pursuing sciences in school. That's why I chose my subject in the university. And then when I did my PhD, it became clearer and clearer that I want to do my own research.
So going back to your project, how far along are you in this project? So you received the ERC starting grant for 2024. How does that work?
So we're at the very beginning. Actually, the funding is going to start in February. And at the moment, we are in the preparation phase, which means we are currently equipping the lab, building everything up, getting the infrastructure into place. And now we are also looking for the right people to join the team to kick things off.
And it's an exciting time in the project then. Taking a wider look, working in your field, what has surprised you about it in chemistry? Is it similar to what you expected when you started out, now that you've had some experience?
Yeah, I think it's always a bit different from what you think initially. So it's not much working with Bunsen burners and these kind of things. So the everyday life is basically working with big instruments. So you basically don't see reactions happening and colors and explosions, especially not in analytical chemistry, because our daily business is trace analysis, and yeah, those amounts are usually too little to actually see an effect on us, on the environment.
Okay, and probably a lot of time in meetings and on the computer as well.
Yeah, that's becoming increasingly more. So it used to be a bit better when I was a PhD student and a postdoc, but I can feel now how the administrative and planning phase is becoming more and more.
Yeah, we see this a lot in our other interviews with our other members. So you're an early career researcher. You're in the scheme of things at the beginning with already a really big achievement under your belt. But we also like to talk about failures in science and how to get along with failures. So how do you think we should deal with negative results in the lab, in your research?
So I think any kind of achievement is usually backed up by a long row of different failures. And I think it's something, maybe even a necessity in the laboratory, especially when you're doing hypothesis-driven research. You have to acknowledge that your hypothesis can be wrong, and in many cases it is. So failure is there every day, and yeah, I think we should embrace it, because there's always something that we can learn from it, and it's definitely nothing that we should be ashamed of.
That's a good mentality. I think that a lot of scientists are needing inspiration to get through daily life. Is there a scientist that was particularly inspiring to you?
Yeah, so I think Richard Feynman would be a good example. He was, I think, one of the earliest scientists who had a really vision for what to do with nanoparticles and nanotechnology. And yeah, he famously said there is plenty of room at the bottom, and that's very true. The problem at the moment is that this bottom of the room in the environment is very uncharted, and at the moment we still don't have the right technology to trace particles in the environment and to really understand them. And that's the task for the future scientists, I think.
Okay, so you have a lot of work ahead of you.
Indeed.
Great. Would you recommend a similar career path to a younger person interested in science?
I think that very much depends on that person. So if somebody who is curiosity driven and likes experimenting around, I think it's an interesting option. And I think also it can be very fulfilling, but I think one has to be aware that there are many obstacles, roadblocks, lots of time and failure invested. And if you don't mind hurdling with that, I think it's a good choice.
That's a nice message. We would love to follow up with your research as this project goes on. Where can we learn about what happens with your research in this ERC grant?
So we're currently establishing some web presences and also other presence on social media. And until that's done, you can just follow me on LinkedIn.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you, David, so much for sharing your journey with the BioNanoNet community. And we look forward to hearing the results.
Great.
All right,
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.